Let's get the thoughts of someone whose opinion that I've always respected. Of course, former Orioles shortstop and Orioles Hall of Famer. Now he's working with the folks at the Baseball Warehouse, among other things. He is our friend Mike Bordick, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Mike, it's Glenn and Paul. It's always great to catch up with you, sir. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Can I ask you one question that I've never asked you before, Mike Bordick? I see the videos and the pictures of what it is that you eat, right? What what
Yeah.
what would a cheat meal look like in Mike Bordick's life? Like, do you ever say to yourself, like, "Hey, today I'll allow myself a like a slice of cheesecake, or maybe even a slice of cheese"? Like, what is a cheat meal in Mike
Oh, I
Bordick's
do that
life?
all the time, actually. But for instance, my wife made some homemade cookies this weekend, chocolate chip cookies, and they're just irresistible. So I
All
had
right,
about five of those, absolutely.
I
And
gotta
every now and then,
I
we'll
gotta be
have a
honest.
pizza night too.
I worry sometimes, Mike, in seeing what you eat. I worry that you might secretly be a psychopath. I'm just being honest because, like,
I love experimenting with my diet. I wish I would have done it earlier in my life, but
man,
I'm having fun doing it, seeing
I
what I can get out of this old body.
it is wild. It is. I mean, wait, you look incredible. I mean, let's just call it like it is. My God, I wish I looked at 22 what you look like at this point in your
Oh
life,
well,
man.
thanks.
Jesus. All right, Mike. Major League Baseball it's gonna happen. Not this year. And who knows if there's gonna be in this year? But starting in 2023, the shift is gone. What is your reaction to the idea that something so drastic is apparently set to become reality?
Yeah, that's pretty bizarre. It really is. I'm still kind of dumbfounded in the fact that major league hitters aren't willing to try to beat the shift. But there again, what comes into play is this whole new baseball philosophy of the all or nothing, and I think it's kind of sad, I guess, to a point that the great game of baseball that's full of so much great strategy and really nuance that the game that I think we came up with was more of a chess match in many ways, and now it's just it's an all or nothing where
It's a home run
pitcher
derby,
throws
right?
as hard as he can, hitters swing as hard as they can. So who knows? Maybe this will kind of bring it back. I think. Um, well, now guys are. I guess their average is going to go up because they won't have to hit into the shift anymore. But I don't know. It's a bizarre game right now, and I just hope it kind of starts to come back to the game. I think that we all fell in love with.
I guess some of the response that someone would have to that would be, well, we didn't do this drastic shifting when we fell in love with the game of baseball, right? Like this didn't exist in the 1990s. So isn't this closer to the game that we fell in love with? Now, I understand your point, Mike, which the all or nothing part of it is the part that's driven me crazy. It's why I actually love the extra inning rule because it forces there to be action in those innings. It forces
right,
it
right. Oh
forces
my God, God forbid somebody lay down a fast
right
one
like
or could
I
hit behind a runner.
I
Oh
can't go
God.
back. I hated it when they announced that all of a sudden they can't go back to the other thing because I'm getting
Yeah.
baseball now in the extra innings. But is there an argument for, hey, this wasn't supposed to be a part of baseball where we had defenders? Some of these have been comical, right? Like where we have five guys all essentially standing in the same place on the field. That this was never supposed to be part of the game. There were supposed to be players positioned in certain areas on the field. Is there an argument that this is what baseball was supposed to be?
Listen, I think baseball is supposed to be, defend the type of hitter you have, and unfortunately, people think, that hitters are just so one dimensional that they could play them all in one spot, and once again, I go back to the fact that, God dang, if you're a major league hitter, you should be able to beat the shift, and that would have kind of kept things status quo, if you will. But there's just been a complete buy-in to the fact that, it's an all or nothing game. So if you're up there, you try to hit a home run. So that means you pull everything, and batting average has dropped off, and things like that. So I think it's a little bizarre that they're kind of forcing the issue to kind of change it back. So it'll be interesting to see. Like I said, I think batting averages will probably come up a little
Mm-hmm.
bit because now that line drive is going to get over the second baseman's head. and fall in front of that right fielder. And no longer will there be like three defenders with a rover out there to cut it off. And who knows, Chris Davis might end up
coming out
hitting
of retirement,
210,
right?
210 if they would have moved the infielders back.
God. By the way, it's definitely the first thought I had when I heard about this. It's like, well, if
Yeah.
you're Chris Davis, you got to at least think about coming out of retirement, don't you? Can it artificially like get action back in the game? Like, is there any way, to what you allude to, that now hits gonna be dropping in? Is there any world in which, if that's the case, you can artificially get back to action and moving runners over and can any of that come back because maybe hitters don't go to the plate assuming they're going to have to swing for the fences every time?
Well, I don't know if they didn't want to try to beat the shift. I just think somebody in the front office is sitting back and thinking, well, how are we going to bring the game back? I think they've realized that they've created just a very sterile, dry game that I don't think a lot of baseball fans are really enjoying. And there are so many great players that it's just become just kind of a cold, sterile game. Okay, if you hit a home run, that's great. If you strike a guy out throwing 97, that's great. But all of a sudden, we've got these so-called best hitters in the world striking out over 200 times, and nobody's even blinking an eye.
Right.
There's never any kind of situational baseball until the extra inning situation, and then even there aren't many guys that even know how to do it. I mean, man, oh man, guys aren't even asked to bunt. The guys don't even know what a bunt is anymore, really, and what the relevance is. And and it all kind of trickles right back to, well, analytics kind of say that this is how it should be.
Yeah, play for 2 runs, don't play for 1 run, right?
Yeah, and I mean, shoot, I appreciate the 3-run homer.
Sure, right, but I'm all for it. Sign me up.
I think there's strategy involved, trying to get a starting pitcher out of the game early. And, of course, that's kind of, I guess 5 innings is all they get anyway nowadays. So it's kind of just a bizarre kind of game right now. And, hopefully it brings back just a little bit more strategy so guys can kind of play along as a fan instead of just sit there and see strikeouts and the occasional home run.
Mike Bordick is with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. Mike, the players didn't give in on robot umpires. Are you at all surprised by that? Given the relationship the players have had with umpires over the years, and given the number of complaints that we hear about them, are you at all surprised that they wouldn't agree to go to robot umpires moving forward?
Well, not really. I mean, I'm glad they didn't. I mean, god dang, baseball is supposed to be, and it's a human game. There are mistakes that are made. I mean, and umpires, I think, are a part of that. Now, do we want to hold them a little bit more accountable to find some consistency? Absolutely. But I will say this, that I think they're a major part of what great baseball is. I think they give that kind of understanding that it is a human kind of game. It's not just played on a board. I mean, my gosh, it's like I said, it's already sterile enough. If we all of a sudden have just a buzzer back there calling strikes and balls, I don't know that players want that anyway.
It's interesting.
You know what I mean?
That's
I would
interesting.
think that hitters are going to find that would be pretty tough. If all of a sudden the ball beeps on the front edge of the plate,
right?
Now you're going to see these sliders that just catch that front edge and break off 5 or 6 feet, and they're going to see the ball, or not 5 or 6 feet, but a foot on the outside corner. They're going to say, well, look where the catcher caught it. Yeah, but it just caught the front edge of the plate, and that's considered a strike. So go sit down, man. So I don't think they really want that anyway. And man, oh man, that's another side of things where, I mean, if you start eliminating umpires, god dang, I just feel like they keep going farther and farther away from just the human side of the great sport that it is.
It's a tough one for me, Mike, because like inherently, I want the calls to be right. You know what I mean? Like that's what I want.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly.
But
Hey, we all do, definitely. I
and
will say this: umpires have gotten a lot better than they were. I think 30 years ago when I guess most umpires generally had their consistencies, but god dang, sometimes it would be a foot off the outside corner. Well, that's what you're going to get with this umpire. Well, this is my strike zone, right? What I've
right,
been kind of
right, deal with it.
learning how
Yeah,
to do. So
yeah. You
I
know,
don't know.
Mike, obviously this is all, we're still in the center of this work stoppage, and let's make sure we call it what it is. It's a lockout from the owners, and I think for the most part the public is siding with the players, but I think there's a lot more of I'm not siding with anybody because none of this impacts me, and nobody's fighting over trying to bring ticket prices down. Nobody's fighting over trying to make it so I have to pay less in my cable bill for a regional sports network, right? Like I think there's a lot of
Yeah,
that response. You've been through
absolutely.
you've been through a work stoppage before, right? Like you were
Yeah.
you were part of it in '94. Can you speak to the players' side of this when they talk about like we have to do this because we have to? Somebody did it for us, so we've got to do it for the next generation, right? And like when they say things like that, can you speak to what it is the players might be going through based on your experiences in '94?
Well, I do appreciate and love the fact that the union is staying so strong, and I think that's something that should really be admired. It's been one of the strongest unions, you know, not just in the history of sport, but just all all jobs. So I think they're doing another great job there. I know that the union, the stuff that we were going through back in the '90s. So much of it was just the players just want the piece of the pie since they're the product that's out there on the field bringing in the fans and the revenue. If the revenues go up, then the players' salary should go accordingly. And I think they kind of have, since the owners finally, I guess they opened up their books and could kind of stop colluding. But I feel like there's that same kind of feeling right now that every time it seems like there's a work stoppage, the underlying theme seems like that the owners just want to break the union and tear it apart. And there have been so many, I think, drastic changes in the game that it just kind of feels like they want to have complete control of like they cut all, so many minor league systems. They cut the drafts back. They've changed even youth baseball with kind of pricing kids out with the
Mm-hmm.
perfect game and this drive line stuff, and that's all collaborated with Major League Baseball. And I don't know, I just feel like the things they've put in place over the last 10 years, they're trying to recreate and restructure a whole system of an incredible game. And I'm happy that the players are kind of fighting for every inch that they can, because I think the owners have gotten a lot. I think the players have kind of conceded on some things, but ultimately the players just want to obviously take the field, play and play this great game that they have played their whole life, as kids. And if we want to continue to try to grow the game and make it, the national pastime that it's supposed to be, then we've got to get it, straighten it out from top to bottom,
Do you
and really, kind of get the kids back involved and, man, get communities back involved. It's such a, I don't know, just a lifeline, I think, for so many communities. And a lot of that's been taken away, which kind of leaves just, once again, I said it was a cold, kind of sterile baseball environment right now. And I just feel like that's what Major League Baseball has been pushing for. Just something, whether it be a financial situation. I know the players just want, more competitive balance instead of these teams that are just tanking year in and year out. And my gosh, how are you going to have freaking expanded playoffs if half the teams are terrible?
Well,
I mean,
and it looks like we're going to see a draft lottery come into play moving forward, which is obviously they hope is going to have an impact on tanking and there being less
yeah,
of a benefit anyway for being that bad. Just Mike, the way that you're talking about it, it sounds like Are you concerned on the whole about what all of this is doing to the sport, in terms of public perception, in terms of, not just whether?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one thing to sit back and pick a side between owners and players, but I think it's way, way deeper than that. I really do. I think there are so many like underlying, um, rabbit holes that we can go down as just as far as you know keeping players, young players especially, from playing the game, from getting more opportunities to chase their dream, and with hopes of being a big leaguer one day. I mean, they've done a lot of things that have kind of limited that, um, for so many young players. It's a little disheartening to say the least.
I understand that. I understand that. And look, I am. There's a part of me that says, hey, Adley Rutschman shows up in Baltimore, whether it's in April or in June, there's going to be a packed house. And if he's as good as everybody says he is, then everybody in Baltimore is going to be in love with the Orioles again. And they're going to want to be at the ballpark watching Adley Rutschman play and the whole thing. But I get what you're talking about, which is it goes beyond that. It's not just about whether or not people are showing up at the ballpark or watching on TV. It's about the relationship with the sport at a grassroots level. That you can't help but wonder about how that's been impacted. For I'll give you an example, Mike. I got a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. They both want to play lacrosse right now, and there were 100 kids, the first, second, and third graders, that showed up for the first day of Hereford Rec Lacrosse yesterday.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know what that looks like in the baseball standpoint. I don't have that answer at the moment because that's what all their friends are doing. That's where they want to be at the moment.
No, well, geez, what helps youth sports, I guess, in any community is a winning franchise.
It doesn't
Or at least
hurt.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
franchise that helps promote the game in the community. And there hasn't really been a lot of that. And I know that with the pandemic really set things back for fans, obviously not being able to go into the field, to see the games, one year, and then partial seating the next year. I think there's a lot of hope on some of the younger players now that the minor league has been considered, one of the
Yep.
top organization in all the organizations. So, but obviously, it's going to take a lot to overcome some of the teams in the East, and whether or not Adley Rutschman can kind of bring that, and some of the other younger players, that's yet to be seen. I know pitching is really the name of the game at the major league level, so better find a way to free up some money and pay some free agent pitching. That's for sure.
So let's wrap with this, right, Mike? Because there was a report last week, and nobody's backed it up, but nobody's denied it either, which is kind of weird. That before the lockout began, the Orioles offered a 10-year contract to Carlos Correa, and that sounds unbelievable to most of us, but it came from a credible reporter in the Latin community that put it out there. What would you think of that? Just hypothetically, that the Orioles, given where they are, and us thinking that right now Carlos Correa individually probably doesn't make the difference, but what would you think of them? If the lockout ends next week, saying no, we're very much in the mix, and we'd be willing to pay $300 million to land Carlos Correa.
Well, there again, if they got that kind of money sitting around, I wish they'd invested in some pitching because that's obviously what's needed, to win and compete in the American League East or to compete anywhere, and it would be unfortunate if they spent all that money on one player and then thought they could, hoist a trophy with just Carlos Correa out here, unless he can, be a Shohei Ohtani and pitch as well. So that's kind of what it comes down to. But I also know, just from past experience, watching some of the top free agents come through Baltimore, there's always kind of, oh yeah, they offer contracts, they entertain the idea of possibly playing at Camden Yards, but it's all to get more out of
Drive
the
up,
Yankees,
right.
Red Sox. So,
Yeah.
That kind of lays in the wings too. And it seems like a Carlos Correa, even though, he's one of the more popular players, I would say, in the game, is stuck down there in Houston. He's looking to all of a sudden become more marketable, I would think. And Baltimore's kind of a tough place, especially after, losing so many games over the last 4 or 5 seasons.
Mike Bordick, what can I plug for you? What can I plug for you personally? Baseball Warehouse. What can we get plugs in for?
Yeah, Baseball Warehouse is still going great. I love helping out, giving some lessons, doing more clinics, and really excited about the youth baseball season kicking up. I can't wait to go out and see some of these young kids play. The League of Dreams, a nonprofit,
Yep,
continues to do some great things, headed by Frank Kalarick. Hoping his son Adam Kalarick gets back on the field soon. Of
that'd be
course,
great.
he's on the 40 man with the A's right now, so he's kind of waiting, biding some time. So yeah, some good things still happening, staying busy right there, and yeah, plug good nutrition. Just because I eat some crazy things and some meat and stuff, I'm not against eating vegetables. I just believe that if we want to change some things around, especially coming out of this pandemic, health and wellness is certainly should be at the top of the list for everybody, and avoiding a lot of the processed foods. I love the idea of eating food with one ingredient. So whole foods I think is going to be really helpful and can definitely have a huge impact, on people's personal lives. But if you think about the ramifications of healthcare and things like that, and who knows, the next time one of these pandemics comes through, we'll be better prepared.
Hearts and livers and marrow. I've seen it all on Mike Bordick's plate in recent months. At mbordick on Twitter, and of course find him on Facebook as well. Mike.bordick.5. Mike, always appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for taking a
Hey,
couple of minutes for us.
absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.